Well, today I want to welcome to the podcast Mark Moses. I feel this is like a very biblical moment because my name is Mark Joseph and I'm with Mark Moses. That has not happened very much in my life. But anyway, Mark, it's great to have you here.
We have Matthew here, right?
That's right.
Mark, Luke,
Matthew, Mark, and
Luke and John. It's great to be here. It's great to be here. Great to be on this project.
Well, it's been so great to have you on this project. I've watched Mad Men, of course, too many times. I'm ashamed to admit how many times I've watched Mad Men. Your role in Mad Men was so interesting. You drew so much into that character. When I say out of that character, of course, Chauncey the dog. Who could forget Chauncey the dog?
Yes, we get a lot of email about that.
I bet you do. And yet, this character, and of course, you played many other characters, but I'm just mentioning one. This character obviously is so different, and it's a whole different aspect of your character. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, I play Bill Clark in this, and Bill Clark really. He did a lot of things, but what he really was, in many ways, was Ronald Reagan's right-hand man. He was 20 years younger than Ronald Reagan, and they met initially when Reagan ran for governor. And when he became governor, he asked Bill Clark for his help. He had a small law firm at the time, and he went up there and developed a way of working and getting through things with Ronald Reagan, which was fast and effective. And Reagan remembers him for that. He also was a very smart man who I think was a fair fellow and people liked him. So Reagan wanted him on his team. And then, of course, he went and assisted him as president in three roles, the Deputy Secretary of State, as well as National Security Council, as well as Secretary of the Interior. So he did a lot. And at that time, just in terms of these roles, Bill Clark is a Westerner. And, well, Mad Men guy was an Easterner, Doug Phillips. And I knew something from Mad Men because my father was kind of a madman in his day on Madison Avenue. But as far as William Clark, learning about him was super interesting to read about someone whose father and whose grandfather had all been lawmen in California. And so he studied the law and passed the bar exam, and I think it was Loyola, and became a judge. And Reagan appointed him as a judge in California, as well as you just mentioned, wanted to appoint him on the Supreme Court, which he turned down and wanted to get back to his ranch. So reading about this era, which I grew through, and I was young when Reagan was president, but to look at it again has been very interesting.
Were you in California at the time?
No, not at all. I think I was in New York City when Ronald Reagan was the president.
I'm just curious, what was at the time, how did someone like you, a young person, how did you view Ronald Reagan in the context of your times?
Well, in the context of my time, it's interesting with today's times to say, make America great again, or something along those lines, which I think may have been actually one of Ronald Reagan's
1980.
slogans. Exactly. So it kind of worked back then because Reagan was seen as someone that was a throwback to the 50s, and sort of a different way, kind of a Mrs. Cheever, kind of My Three Sons kind of lifestyle. Now it seems way out of whack because it's so much, but he seemed just a short jump, and so it seemed like someone from yesteryear was becoming president. I didn't think about it that much. I don't think I voted for Ronald Reagan at the time.
Did he feel like the man?
To me, it didn't. It just seemed to me like he was a good speaker. A lot of people liked him. I was actually rather surprised by the landslide victory. Why that happened. I was kind of at the time unaware about how unhappy people were with Carter at the time. And oftentimes presidents come in either at a difficult time or a time where things are on the upswing. Sometimes it's just sheer luck. Sometimes they make that. Ronald Reagan did a little of both. A little bit of luck, and he also had policies that changed the world, which is interesting, and some policies that didn't work out. Like all presidents, there were successes and failures. In terms of where I was living, in the East Village, there was a lot of people let out of homes and shelters.
After he became president?
After he became president. For whatever reason it happened, could have been New York City, could have been him, but that's what I remember is at the time there was a lot of homeless, and I had to step over the alcove to get to my apartment. So that was around the time when he first became president. Yeah.
Well, it's great to meet you because I've met the real Judge Clark, as I told you a couple of times. And, of course, by the time I met him, he was in a wheelchair by that point. He was about 82 years old when I got some time with him. But I went up to his ranch, and you capture the earlier Clark years so well, just in your mannerisms and the way you conduct yourself. And I'll never forget, we have this in the script, but he told me that Reagan had come to him after Iran-Contra and wanted some advice. And we put this in the script, but I said, what did you tell him? He said, I just told him, just be yourself. tell the truth. I said, do what you do best, tell the truth.
Yes, and it's a great scene. I love that
kind of
scene.
Relationship that they have.
It's a really good scene, Mark.
And do you feel that you and Dennis have been able to capture that? I think you have.
Well, I think, quite frankly, I think he was, he may have been the guy who laughed at all of Ronald Reagan's jokes. He could have been that guy as well as a lot of other things. But I think he balanced off Ronald Reagan very well. Ronald Reagan was a pretty animated president. There are a lot of presidents that are actors, but there are very few actors. In fact, he's the only one who was a legitimate actor and became president. I know Bill Clark was a quiet, taciturn type of man, soft-spoken, and I think it worked well. It was a good Mutt and Jeff team.
Do you think he was an ideologue from what you read?
Yes, I do. Reagan or Bill Clark?
Bill Clark.
He had ideas about communism which stemmed from his Catholicism. Reagan had ideas about communism which stemmed from the McCarthyism and all the trials that happened in Hollywood, the blacklisting. People still take sides about that. Not so much Bill Clark's point of view, but Reagan's point of view.
Right.
However, as
we
we talked about before, which was news to me, there were 30 more democracies in the world after Reagan finished his presidency. So his supporting democracies paid off.
Yeah, I think there are still, I've encountered some people who are still angry about the role Reagan played during that period, during the blacklisting. I remember in particular Irvin Kershner, Star Wars fame. Boy, I got an earful from him about how awful Reagan was and evil he was because I think he had cooperated with the FBI to some extent, maybe something like that. But of course, those folks are older now, and a lot of them are gone now.
Right.
But just coming to the role itself, how do you go about as far as mannerisms? That's not in a book. How did you study that, and how did you come to that?
Actually, the book The Judge, which I would recommend to anyone who wants to learn about that period, because from Bill Clark's perspective, you learn a lot about everything that happened during the Reagan years, and a lot about Ronald Reagan, and a lot about Bill Clark, but a lot about how things got together. Who was there? Who was in control? Was it Haig? Was it Schultz? Was it Deaver? Was it Jim Baker? You learn about all these players in the Reagan administration and how Reagan managed them. And I think he was a very good manager of people. He listened well. He used to send Bill Clark out to talk to Nixon, Carter, and Ford, and have him report back. What does Carter know about the Middle East? What does Nixon know about China? What does Ford know about domestic issues? He gathered this information, and that tells you, I think people that are good managers, are smart leaders, listen to people, and I think Reagan did that.
He was a good manager as long as the people he had were doing the right thing.
Doing the right thing, and who knows what happened during the second term when he got a bit of dementia, as I think is pretty well documented right now.
But if you delegate to folks that are not doing the right thing, maybe even Iran-Contra itself, maybe he knew, maybe he didn't. We don't really take sides in that issue.
No.
That's the problem. That's the downside of that kind of management style.
It is the downside of it. If someone suggests something, then you may go about regretting it. I think Dick Cheney had a lot of influence over George Bush, and I think he regrets that choice as well. So you have to have good people around you, and you have to also obviously be certain about what you want, what you want to get done, which is one of the lines that Bill Clark has in this to Schultz when he joins the team. But yeah, it's an interesting project. I think we'll look back on it and see it in a different way.
Did you look him up on YouTube? Did you study any mannerism issues?
Yes, I watched him when he was in front of the Senate hearings for becoming Secretary of the Interior, and he just answers the questions calmly. He doesn't get riled up. They talked for a long time. People are actually briefer in their cross-examination now than they used to be. They used to go on for hours and days for these hearings. But there was more civility back then. They asked questions, he answered them. He came out of both winning quite handily. When every time he went up for either Deputy Secretary of State or Secretary of the Interior or National Security Council, he got flack from everybody that he wasn't qualified enough. And then he ended up walking away, and people were sad he was going. So he was a very good manager of getting things done, and proved to help Ronald Reagan. Because people were afraid that Ronald Reagan was not fond of our environment. He had environmental challenges. And when Bill Clark took over Secretary of the Interior, that changed. Changed the viewpoint of the Sierra Club and a lot of other people. So Bill Clark, being a rancher, knew a lot more about it than was suspected at the beginning.
Well, let's talk about you for a minute. Your wide, how do I say, the variety of work that you've done over the years. When you walk down the street, what do people say? What's the character they remember?
I said this. It's interesting. If you are someone like Dennis Quaid, who's playing Reagan, and you've made a movie they all love, whether it's The Rookie or something that they see, they recognize you in that forever. Oftentimes with television, it seems like there's a 3 or 4 year period where everybody recognizes you, and then it fades away. I don't know why that seems to be. If it's a film, they know you forever for Platoon. If it's a television show and they watched it growing up, they'll know you on Desperate Housewives or Mad Men or The Killing or whatever they liked. You also learn about what type of people watch certain shows. A guy today on the set said, "You were the president in The Last Ship." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I loved that. It was over too soon." And a wide variety of people watched The Last Ship because it was military. So it didn't have a defining type.
I see.
Like, the barristers watch Mad Men, the moms and their daughters watch Desperate Housewives, and some of the guys that like the girls, in Desperate Housewives.
So we're here in Oklahoma, so it was the military character.
For this guy today, for this one guy today, it just depends. It could be a comedy. It could be Big Mama's House. It could be, something that they saw that they loved. It could be one show. It could be a series. You just never know what people watch. And today, there's so many choices that even I don't know what somebody's on because I don't have the channel. There's just so many choices, so it changes.
What about television versus film? You've obviously done a lot of both.
Yes.
What's the difference, and which do you
Well,
enjoy?
when I started off, there was a big stigma about doing one or the other.
Right.
Like, it just seemed that you were either film actor or television actor. But now, of course, some of the best material is being written for television because films are just being so hard. It's so hard to produce. The box office, especially now with COVID, it's hard to get those movies made if they're not superhero movies. So a lot of serious drama is moving toward television, as you know, and it's great. I mean, we're probably in the golden age of television right now. There's just
or whatever it's called.
Whatever it is,
not really
right
television.
Now. It's entertainment. Yes.
Right. It's Netflix.
Netflix and everything else, but it's content and it's lots of work for people.
Right.
And so, it is what it is. Changed dramatically.
But which do you enjoy? Do you draw a distinction?
Here's the distinction. If you're playing a part on television and you started off on a series, half the time, even Mark Cherry doesn't really know where that part's going. Matt, I think Weiner had an idea because it was a limited series. But if you're doing a lot, you're depending on the actor to bring something in. The story does change. Whereas a film, beginning to end, that you die on page 76, or, you have a terrible accident, or something happens to your child. It's just a story for 2 hours.
Right.
And that's enjoyable because you can see the arc right then and there.
Right.
So they both have their challenges. Bill Macy said to me once, it used to be said, well, the actor can do television, but can he do film? And he said, it really should be, the actor, he can do film, but can he do television? Because you're thrown the script at the last minute, and you have a lot more to memorize. Whereas a film, you can sit down, study it. In that sense, a film is a little more fun because you can really study the characters. You have some time, and you know where the scenes are, and you can study. There's not something new coming in, usually, unless there's a rewrite. So they're both fun.
Yeah, Matt and Mark, those are two great people you've worked with.
Yes,
right? That's really remarkable.
Really great writers and really good storytellers, which really is what television is about, storytelling through words. And in film, of course, it's storytelling through words often, but oftentimes pictures. And you can sort of see the pictures in film, shot to shot, and you sort of get transported into a magical world. I suppose I'm a little more romantic about film because you remember going to the theater and you remember being transported, whether you're watching Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or you're watching, some great musical like Singing in the Rain or whatever it might be. It transports you a little bit. So it's a little more magical when there's a theater.
I love the fact that in these conversations, I really had no idea about people's politics, and people surprise me sometimes. Who was I surprised by? I was surprised by somebody the other day. Yeah. But anyway, we talked a little bit about politics, and I thought, I said, would you ever run for office? And you said...
I said, no way. It just seems like there's way too much information out there right now. I mean, at some point you didn't do something smart, and someone's going to find out about it. And everything's tracked and everything's digital, and it makes us paranoid, but we hopefully we do get young people, and young people get involved with politics and governance, because it's getting very complicated right now, and we need those type of people, those motivated people. As I said, I hope people don't get too jaded by a mistrust of government right now. What they need to know sometimes is that there's a lot of good, hard-working. Some of our best students are working in the government for no money. They just want to be part of our country and the way things function, and they've gone to school. We can't always judge by the politicians what these people who run the country are like.
If you were to run,
if I were to run,
what office would you like to have?
Oh, let's see. If I ran, I suppose
a senator, a governor,
a senator, or you always wonder, could I be the mayor of New York City? And I go, boy, would that be a job? That would be a tough one. That would be a tough job. You think about a mayor. It has to get along with the police department and so many departments. I mean, whatever you served, I think a governor, you would learn a lot about the state, like Reagan did. A senator, obviously, you'd be able to represent people in Washington. Hopefully, you would represent them and not just special interest groups.
Right. You would strike me as a problem-solving politician.
Well,
am I right?
I think I would like to get stuff done. Exactly. That's exactly. I think I might look past a few issues in order to get something done. Some people are remembered for that, like Buddy Cianci of Providence, Rhode Island, who was kind of a crook, but people didn't mind it because he got stuff done.
He filled the potholes.
Maybe he filled up some money bags with money and got something done this way, but he also got the waterfront done.
Right.
So people like people that get things done. They don't always want to know all the answers, and politics right now is just become just awful right now. We're bombarded with it. People are sick of it. I think they'd like to hear less from any of our politicians. Once every month is fine, or 2 weeks, or they read about it, but we don't need to be bombarded 24/7 with news and polls and money and constant money. So I do hope, as I said, we can end Citizens United, which I think is a bipartisan issue, and that's why I talked to Governor Bullock the other day, and he's interested in Montana, because it's just ruining our democracy. There's too much influence, and every vote should count, and we should be representing the people. So,
what about filmmaking in the era of COVID? Is this your first production post-COVID?
Well, I had one I was going to do. I was supposed to be off to Atlanta, and 2 days before I left, they pulled the plug. That's how it happened so quickly, within a week, and I had to pull the plug. I was going to play the president.
What, a president? Or
I was going to play a president, a fictional president.
What has this been like in terms of the COVID filmmaking? What are your thoughts, Ab?
My thoughts are that everyone's trying to do their best, and yet we don't know all about this, and you try to do your best. There is an element that anything can happen, but I think it's safer than everyday life, unless you're just hibernating at home and not leaving an apartment. I think we'll figure it out. Who knows? It's tricky. It's very tricky. I feel for you guys. It's a tough job. And of course, as we talked about, the tests have got to get better. They're just all over the map right now.
A lot of false positives.
A lot of false positives and a lot of false negatives. A friend of mine had it for 2 weeks. His doctor said, "You have this. You have this." He did 12 tests. They were all negative.
Oh my goodness!
So it's very
12 tests were all
12
negative?
tests were all negative, and he lost 12 pounds and had no taste. Just symptoms of COVID, and they came back negative. So we have testing that's not really working right now. So, hopefully, we get over this. I'm positive we will by
in time for this movie to be in theaters.
Exactly.
Next year.
Wouldn't that be great? Within a year.
What's the lesson? What would you tell us? What's the takeaway of Judge Clark's life? Having studied him, played him now, what do we learn from him?
Modest beginnings, kind of like Ronald Reagan. Worked his way up, studied hard. His father was a lawman. What you take away from him is he really wanted to lead a good life. He went to the seminary for 1 year. I know he was a religious man. He was a Catholic. And he felt that he had a mission. I think Ronald Reagan gave him this mission. He believed. He gave him hope. And when you look to a president, it's very important, as we are seeing right now, that you have hope. And that hope is based on something positive, not negative. And I think when we look back in history, we like presidents that give us hope. And maybe it may not be specific, it may not be policy, but oftentimes it's the unspoken, this thing you can't touch. You just go, I feel safer here.
And how about Mark Moses? What's the life lesson we learned from Mark Moses' life?
How about this? Stay out of politics.
Mark, you've been such a joy to work with. Thanks for all the
Mark.
great things you brought to this production.
It's going to be terrific. I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you.
Bye.